the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Dr. Nzimande, but he's joined this morning by a panel, and I'd like to introduce our guests who will help us unpack some of these issues because they have their own experiences in the job creation arena. So let me introduce to you, first of all, the CEO of the MICT, that's Media, Information, Communication and Technologies SETA. The CEO there, Mr. Opa Mupaki. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to you. This is on the assumption, of course, that we've already introduced Dr. Nzimande here. Next to him is Zunaid Mayet, who's the Executive Director of EOH, an ICT organization. And on the wing, on the far side, Ashwin Willemse, who you may actually remember as a fairly useful rugby player, scored a few tries in his day. But why he's here today is that he's actually part of a youth learnership initiative that's being managed by EOH. So we're going to be finding out a little bit about his experience in that and what EOH has been doing as a private entity in terms of job creation, learnerships and things like that. And also the SETA, how are they working? Because as the good doctor was saying just before the break, we basically have to do this together. So let's find out as we get into conversation how some of these things have been unfolding, and perhaps we've got some good examples here on stage. We'll find out. But Minister, let's start with you. Naledi's in bed, and she's unemployed, and she says, what's your message for me? What can you tell me? What can you do to change my life?
Of course, that's the challenge we have on youth unemployment, which is amongst other things, the subject that we're talking about today. First of all, I think it's important for us to say to our youngsters, they must not give up. I think that attitude is very important, that the fact that they do not have work at the moment, they must not give up. And also we encourage them to actively look out for opportunities that can improve their employability. That is also a very important matter. I want to say that we are really paying a lot of attention to that now. Let me tell you one major thing that we've just done, although some sections of business are unhappy with this. We are redirecting the SETA monies from the SETA, to focus more on supporting occupational and trade programs of training. In other words, the grants, we are saying that we must reduce the mandatory grants that goes to employers and increase discretion so that we could direct more funds to support artisan training and other occupational training, and also to increase support for learnerships and internships. So I would say to Naledi, try go out, look for internships as well, if you can't get a job at the moment. Because as it has been said by Zunaid, many of our youngsters who actually get an opportunity for an internship, our own research tells us that 70% of them, they end up getting employed. So, and also, as I say, make use of the opportunities that government has provided, which links to the second question, that for poor students, we've really increased support to them. It's still not enough, but we've increased significantly bursaries. Poor students, basically, who are taken at FET colleges are not paying at the moment. We have increased support also for university students, and we want to do some more, so that further education and training opportunities also is one way through which some of our unemployed youngsters can be able to improve their employability, because that is one issue also that we need to put on the agenda, the issue of employability of our youth.
Before we turn to the private sector and to the SETAs, we've got this anomaly that we've got hundreds of thousands of unemployed graduates. I think it's reached something like nearly 580,000. So whilst you're investing in these FET colleges and the universities, we're actually maybe creating more unemployed skilled people. But it seems maybe that the skills that they're being taught and trained are not appropriate for the workplace, where's the disconnect? Where's the conversation taking place to make sure that someone who's trained in a university, FET college, is actually trained in something that's going to produce a job?
Peter, that's a very important matter. Yes, there is a challenge in relation to matters of quality and relevance of our education. That is why we are doing some of these things that I was articulating today, and I've said them before on this platform. But also there's a challenge for employers. You know, this week I got an email from someone with a PhD in chemistry who is unemployed. Not only that, has spent 3 years at the University of Cape Town in postdoctoral research and studies, is unemployed. It doesn't make sense to me. The challenge is also for employers, do they go hard enough to really look for qualified people? There is also another issue that we need to have a conversation as South Africans. Some employers do not want qualified people because they don't want to pay. You're looking at your 12 months return, you are not looking at a medium, longer term implications in terms of skills development. So employers themselves, they need to look at themselves in the mirror to actually say that what are we doing? Also, our research tells us, by the way, that 2 students graduating with the same degree from the same university, if you are white students, it normally takes you between 3 and 6 months to find a job, but if you are a black student, same qualification, anything up to a year before you get a job.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it means that we still have a challenge of racism in our workplaces. We must confront that as South Africans. And to say that is not an insult to anybody. But that's the reality, by the way, that the president was talking about. Okay. That apartheid still lives with us and reproduces itself at this point in time. So whenever we talk about these challenges, we must not shy away from confronting these problems. Let me say one more thing also, which as South Africans we need to have a conversation about, is gatekeeping in the workplace. For example, a number of black engineering graduates, they take 9 to 10 years to become professional engineers, certificated. Sometimes accountants, they leave because they don't get given the necessary experience that we need. Pilots, trainee pilots. We've been engaging SA Express, SAA, and so on, and saying that black pilots are not given the required number of hours. It takes them long to become captains, you know. Those are some of the issues that we also have to confront, because, as I say, the partnership must look at the entire pipeline of the production of skills if we are to tackle unemployment, from school to college, university, and also what is going on in the workplace.
All right. Okay, let's shift a little bit, because in between kind of, I guess, what you do, private sector does, there's a vehicle there, the CETAs, and they've been an institution in our country for some time. Employers have been pouring money into skills development levies and so on and so forth. And so my question to you, Mr. Mupak, is what have the CETAs been doing? Why are we still in this situation where you've been sitting on quite a lot of funds to try and address this situation?
Thanks, Peter, and good morning to the audience. A very pertinent question indeed. You say that employers have poured monies into the CETAs over a period of time, and it looks like we have nothing to show for it. Let me quickly respond by saying, as employers pour money into CETAs, CETAs pour back the money into employers' coffers. So CETAs don't actually train. CETAs facilitate training, and the training is led by employers with the support of sector education and training authorities. So it's not like employers contribute funds to CETAs and CETAs take the funds elsewhere for training. Sector education and sector training is about workplace training by and large. So it doesn't happen elsewhere. Yes, of course, there were some challenges with regard to, setting up systems, the type of training that employers want, and so on and so forth. But what I need to say quickly is that employers submit workplace skills plans and annual training reports not only to the MICT SETA, but to all the sector education and training authorities. And in doing so, we get to sort of pick up the kind of training that employers want, and we respond to that training. Of course, in partnership with employers, that's what we do. But what is interesting is that we continue, or employers continue saying we have a shortage of skills, particularly in the MICT sector. Now, why is it that we have a shortage of skills when we are informed by information coming from employers in terms of where the training should be focused? That is still a big question. It is for this reason that the MICT SETA, in partnership with EOH, had, can you call it a serious discussion, about what is it that we have been doing over the years. Of course, taking into account that a number of learners have been trained, and we know that after training, most of them have not been absorbed into the workplace. But I should quickly mention that when it comes to graduate internships for learners who have university degrees, the uptake is pretty much high when it comes to employment on completion of a graduate internship program. We still have a challenge when it comes to learnership. Of course, learners still get employed after completing learnership programs, but of course, we still have to work much better to make sure that these learners are absorbed into the workplace.
All right, so that's at the SETA level, and you mentioned a partnership that you had with EOH. You're a private sector company. Dr. Nzimande is asking you as a sector of business to join the party. Perhaps you can give us an example of how you've worked with MICT SETA, what programs you've put into place, so that maybe we can share some seeds with other companies, and tell us a little bit about the successes that you've had.
Sure. Firstly, thank you, Peter, and good morning to the viewers. We embarked on a program some 18 months ago, and the program is, we've dubbed it the EOH Youth Job Creation Initiative, and it's solely focused at targeting the unemployed youth of our country. Now, the statistics, the minister has mentioned some of the statistics. You talked about the level of, or the volume of unemployed graduates that we have in our market. So that has really been the target market for EOH. And in embarking on this program, we've got three main thrusts. And it's all about a call to arms to industry. So to our industry peers, to take a more active responsibility and a proactive stance in addressing youth unemployment. That's the first thing. And what we've done is, the first thing we've said is, we need to repatriate jobs that have been offshored. So we've got a number of organizations operating in South Africa, South African multinationals. We've got international organizations that operate in our market that are the recipients of services being delivered from other countries. We're saying, bring those back. Those jobs belong here in our country. Right. The second thing we're saying is, we need to get the private sector to invest in our economy. The collective cash pile that the JSE listed companies sit on today is in excess of 600 billion rand. Everybody's waiting for the right time, the right climate, the right circumstance to invest. It's never going to be perfect. We're saying invest now, and that'll result in the growth in our economy, and the spin-off is obviously the creation of jobs. And the third dimension is the dimension where we've partnered with Opa Mopaki and the MICT SETA. And that is around internships and learnerships. And that is, I guess, the key thrust of the Youth Job Creation Program and initiative at EOH. So what we're saying is, and I said it earlier, is we've got this curious situation where we have massive youth unemployment on the one hand, but a critical skill shortage on the other hand. I mean, that's a contradiction, if ever there was one. So what we need to do is analyze what are the skills that we require, right, in terms of addressing the skill shortage and where the gap is. And the conclusion we've come to is that skills equals formal education, and the Minister has said so, but coupled with on-the-job experience.
Okay.
All right. So the key thrust of our program then is to provide young people with that on-the-job experience.
All right, let me ask you this. Your company's taken on this initiative. Does this kind of program come at a cost to you? So maybe a sacrifice that you have to make initially, but is there a return on that investment?
Yeah. So the legislative framework is there. You know, I think as private sector, we've tended to sit back and expect government to do things and create jobs. Our view is, and excuse me, Minister, we don't see it as the role of government to create jobs. We expect, as citizens of this country, as commercial enterprises in our country, that our government creates a framework and an environment that provides for economic development and job creation. And we believe government has by and large done that across a number of spheres. The legislative environment exists. The incentives from a government perspective in terms through the SETAs exist. The tax incentives exist. And I think that there's a combination of lethargy from a private sector perspective, but I think it's also got to do with organizations don't know what they don't know, and they maybe and it's both an information and an education challenge that we have.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move on past the ball to the wing there. Ashwin, I know that you've gotten involved in this particular project, and you've had a distinguished career on the sports field, and perhaps we're quite lucky that you were born with the talent. But I guess a lot of your peer group perhaps didn't get the same opportunities. Why did you get involved in this particular youth creation, job creation project? And from your perspective, what can be done for some of your mates that didn't make it onto rugby fields and perhaps didn't finish their education?
Good morning, Peter, and thanks for not giving me a hospital pass there. Good morning, Minister, as well as the guest. Peter, I think firstly for me, and the Minister has actually alerted to it, the fact of what business does and how business have to contribute to it. And I think with the difference that I've found with EOH is that you find that the message are the same from exactly the top brass all the way through the company. When you find the CEO talk about the job creation initiative, is with the same passion that Junaid and all the other directors and executives talk about it. And I think that's the mindset and the philosophy with the company, that they really ultimately want to contribute towards the situation that we face from a job creation perspective. And from a personal perspective, I've looked at it from this way, in that I found that there's a lot of parallels between professional sportsmen and ultimately the vast unemployed youth, because you spend the prime of your life basically performing on the field and doing what you're good at. Afterwards, you find that you are unemployable in a way, because you spend 10 years on the rugby field playing the game that you're good at, but yet you've got no job experience. And we come back to the situation where we say, no work without experience and no experience without any jobs. So it brings us back to the debate of who came first, the chicken or the egg scenario. But ultimately, I believe that with the right mindset and the right framework with individuals, and the one specific person that was saying that she's still lying in bed, the question that bogs me is how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of youngsters or youth are still lying in bed watching the same program this morning. And the message to the youth should be that, provided that we give the opportunity, you find that a young boy from a rural town are able to have been given an opportunity within an industry that was conducive for what he had to offer. And ultimately, I was able to cultivate through that environment and get to the fore, and eventually find myself not just being good at the game of rugby, but eventually turning out to be a South African Rugby Player of the Year. Essentially, after I've retired, they've gone to 2 World Cups, they've played 2 Senior World Cups, 2 Junior World Cups, won a Junior and a Senior World Cup gold medal. That is, in essence, what we have caught up in bed this morning. we've got that ability that we can find pioneering individuals within the South African fraternity that can really contribute tremendously towards the country and also ultimately towards the benefit of so many others. And those are the sort of individuals that we have to give the opportunity to. And the only reason why I was able to do it from a personal perspective was because of, firstly, the opportunity, and secondly, I believe the dedication, the hard work, and the motivation that I had within. And those are not attributes that is exclusive to Ashwin Willemse, not at all. I believe that that is within each and every one of us. So ultimately, from my perspective, is to say that we need to find a situation where we say, yes, we want to contribute, we want to assist, and we want to help. And that's where EOH has been a leader in that, not just from talking about it, but going to the next step and actually doing it.
All right, okay, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm actually looking forward to chatting to you a bit more, because when I look at this panel, you're probably still the youth brigade of us here. And you probably have a good perspective of some of the issues that the young people are facing, even though you're retired. But it is from sports, so you know it's not like some of us who've got grey hair and bourgeois tummies. But anyway.